The debt ceiling is the legal limit on how much the U.S. government can borrow to pay its bills. It has been a source of political conflict and economic uncertainty for the past decade, as Congress and the White House have struggled to agree on how to raise it or suspend it. In 2011, the U.S. faced its first debt ceiling crisis, when Republicans demanded spending cuts in exchange for raising the limit. The standoff lasted for months and led to a downgrade of the U.S. credit rating by Standard & Poor's, as well as a sharp drop in consumer confidence and stock prices. The crisis was only resolved after Congress passed the Budget Control Act, which raised the debt ceiling by $2.1 trillion and imposed automatic spending cuts known as sequestration. 2 years later, in 2013, another debt ceiling crisis erupted, as Republicans tried to use the leverage of the limit to defund or delay the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The impasse resulted in a partial government shutdown that lasted for 16 days and cost the economy an estimated $24 billion. The crisis was averted after Congress passed a bill that suspended the debt ceiling until February 2014 and reopened the government. In 2019 and 2021, the debt ceiling was suspended again by bipartisan agreements that also raised spending caps for defense and non-defense programs. These suspensions expired in January 2023, triggering the Treasury Department to start taking extraordinary measures to avoid defaulting on its obligations. The current debt ceiling crisis is arguably the most dangerous one yet, as the U.S. is facing a potential default amid a banking crisis that has shaken confidence in the financial system. 3 regional banks have collapsed in the span of 2 months, exposing widespread fraud and mismanagement. The Federal Reserve has stepped in to provide emergency liquidity and supervision, but investors are worried about contagion and systemic risk. The Treasury Secretary has warned that the U.S. could run out of cash and default on its debt as soon as early June, unless Congress acts swiftly to raise or suspend the debt ceiling. However, House Republicans have refused to cooperate, demanding spending cuts or other concessions from the White House. The president has rejected any negotiations, saying that paying the nation's bills is not a political game. If the U.S. fails to raise or suspend the debt ceiling before it runs out of money, it will have to prioritize its payments and delay or stop others. This could mean missing payments on Social Security benefits, Medicare reimbursements, military salaries, interest on the debt, and more. Such a scenario would have devastating consequences for millions of Americans and businesses, as well as for global financial markets and stability. The U.S. has never defaulted on its debt before, and it is unclear what would happen if it does. Some experts warn that it could trigger a financial meltdown worse than the 2008 crisis, while others argue that it could be managed with minimal disruption. Either way, it is a risk that most people agree should be avoided at all costs.